Farm Kenya, brought to you by Fugo.
Maziwa kwa wingi, ni kama mvua. Maziwa kwa wingi, utashiba.
Akishiba, utashiba. Fugo Calf Starter Pellets, Calf Grow Pencils, Heifer Grow, Dairy Milk Plus, and Maxi Milk Plus. Products of Unga Farm Care.
Akishiba, utashiba. Utashiba.
Profite na ng'ombe wako.
Mkono ambao unalima ardhi, mlango wa kulima, kuwa mshindi, kuwa na uhakika sasa, kulea mustakabali wa baadaye. Tufanye kazi pamoja na tukue pamoja, kuimarisha Kenya ni jukumu la Farm Kenya.
To some people, it's been confusing. Are capsicum fruits or vegetables? Well, in today's episode of the Farm Kenya, we are discussing capsicum, which is actually a fruit because it is bell pepper and it's classified. Peppers are classified under fruits. Welcome to the show. My name is Noah Kipkimboy, and let's have a discussion how you can get into capsicum farming, how to do it right, some of the mistakes to avoid, and lastly, how to make sure that your product reaches the market. Welcome once again. Thank you very much, Sam, for making time to have us in your farm and to have this discussion about capsicum farming. For starters, a lot of people, we enjoy this fruit in a vegetable format. But for you, your first interaction with capsicum, when was it, even before considering going into farming?
I think it's been quite a while. But you see now, basically, I just loved how these carrot capsicum are produced. I just loved that art since when I was actually starting. And actually, I started with a small space, so I didn't start with this big. Now, after observing how they are produced, how beautiful they become, now when you're getting the products, I think I got interested into farming.
Oh, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So when you talk about capsicum, as you rightly put it, there are colored ones. And even green is a color. I think we ignore the green one and be like, yeah, that one is more affordable, but we have these colored ones. Help us break down the capsicum ecosystem. How many types do we have? Do they all grow in the same conditions, or does it vary one from the other?
So now basically when you talk about capsicum, of course you have ranges of them. We have the green pepper, we have the carrot, like the one that we are talking about, which is red and yellow. We have the oranges. But now when you want to discuss about the ecosystem of the carrot capsicum or the capsicum generally, is that we have the local capsicum, and of course we have these one, the hybrids. Of course these are hybrids. And actually that's why you see they have a difference in terms of growth, where they are grown. Like for example, if you check on the green capsicum, it is mostly done outside. So actually we can be able to range them under outdoor and indoor. Now for the outdoor, it's basically the local ones, like the green capsicum, which of course grows or does well under normal environment, like just in the field. But now we have this one that we call the indoors. The indoors are basically now these one, the red capsicum. We have the green one. Oh no, sorry. We have the red, we have the yellow, and we have the orange.
Okay.
Those are basically the ones that are done inside the greenhouse.
Okay.
Yeah. And of course, basically they are all green, but they transit now to different colors.
Definitely. Even this one is green right now.
It will be red soon.
But it's going to be red soon, yeah? So it's very interesting because even the capsicum market, of which we'll discuss later on, is also segmented based on demand and the perceived value of these different kinds of capsicum. But for starters, I want to come into capsicum farming. You've said there's outdoor ones and indoor ones. Break to me the considerations that a new farmer or a farmer who's done other crops wanting to come into capsicum farming, they have sort of to have, as a foundation before going knees deep and buying seeds and putting up warehouses and tilling land? Like, what should new farmers understand about capsicum farming before coming into it?
I think as a farmer and also as a consultant, one thing I usually advise my farmers, or I can give advice to everyone who want to join into this venture of the colored capsicum. The first thing, even before you set up the greenhouses, you get your landlady, the first thing that you need to establish is the market. And of course, here we are talking about agribusiness perspective. So definitely, if you are talking about agribusiness where you want to plant these plants, then of course sell the product, you need to first of all consider the market. Once you establish a good and stable market, now that's when now you follow the other schedules, because of course even the market has its own dynamics that it calls for, like the quality and of course the list. Now when you get the market, that is now where you narrow down to which market do I have. Do I have for the open capsicum, or do I have for the indoor capsicum? Okay. That's how you get the basics.
All right.
Yeah.
So market is very critical. Instead of you're starting from the end, working backwards. And again, we have a local market, international market.
Sure.
There is the market for outside capsicums, the local ones, the normal green ones, and now these colored ones. And your establishment here, it's a greenhouse setup where you're growing the colored capsicums.
Sure.
Do they require a different set of environment compared to, can't I grow the yellow ones or the red ones outside?
Good. Now, like you've said, now before now we've done with the market, you have the market ready. Now you need to know, of course your market tells you what you need to grow. Let's take for example, if my market demands for the one that can be done on open field. One thing about the open field is that most of the open field crops, they usually have that resistance to maybe pests and disease. Now that is for the open field. And now when you want to grow the open field capsicum, if you consider things like now the plant itself, actually there is a very big difference between those capsicum that are grown outside and those that are grown inside a greenhouse. And some of these variations are the one that now tells you which one to go for. Like if you check for this one, the reason we've actually gone ahead to do the greenhouses, and we are also doing it in a greenhouse, is that first, they cannot survive outside the greenhouse. They are usually made for an indoor arena, somewhere that they are inside. And of course, the reason for this greenhouse is mostly to safeguard some of these predicaments that can come along with the production, like things to do with pest and disease. In terms of management, you see all these, we are doing the ropes here to support the plants. So basically, now when you want to get into this farming, of course you have to understand, if I'm going for the outdoor, what does the outdoor plants need for me? If you're going for the indoor, what does it need? Of course, the indoor I've mentioned, they need the support structures, the greenhouse, and basically, like I've said, mostly for greenhouse is that to safeguard them from pest and disease attack, because now unlike those ones that are outside, of course they're exposed to so many pests, because of course pest is everywhere. But you see here, we've already safeguarded them. Number two is that from the colors, you see now after some time they'll change to different colors, they'll change to red or yellow. So now that change, of course when they are outside, they also become host to birds. You see, birds love something that has colors. So that's why of course you also safeguard them under a greenhouse.
Yes, that's very interesting.
Interesting.
So for colored ones, more support needed, structure. In terms of productivity, now I've decided I'm going to go into colored capsicum. I've done my market research, and maybe even as a consultant, a little bit on the market research thing. Do people do it correctly? What is the right way to do a market research as a farmer who wants to go into a particular crop? Is it going into your local market and asking around, where do you guys source your capsicums from? How much? Then you write down, then be like, I'm I have the ability to supply this and that maybe in the next 3 months. How can market research be done for somebody who hasn't done market research before?
I think that one, Noah, you see, most people, I think it's not done well, maybe to answer your questions, because most farmers don't understand that you're supposed to look for the specific market even before you do the planting. Like it's supposed to start as early as possible, so that now when you now get to the production stage whereby you are starting to harvest, you already have a stable market to, of course, give your products. But mostly when you talk about market, is that for this market, of course, nowadays it becomes even very easy for you to maybe channel your market or to know the market dynamics and all that, because of course we have the social media, we have of course platforms, you can go to local markets. Of course there are people who are doing that. I think those are some of the places that you can be able to get information now regarding to market of whichever product you want to do, and also the current Capsicum.
Okay, very, very important. And to be able to do market research, so that unfortunately a lot of people lose product.
True.
After they have produced, and they are wondering, okay, where am I going to sell this? And it becomes quite a problematic thing. But now you've settled on a particular, capsicum. You say you want to do colored ones. These you say that you have to do them in a greenhouse. Talk to me about the initial cost, because it varies. Sometimes you hear some people are selling land with greenhouses and they're giving you this crazy return on investment, and you're wondering, is this a pyramid scheme or not? But also you talk to farmers on the ground and they're like, putting up a greenhouse is not as cheap. So talk to me about the costing element in terms of preparing a greenhouse for colored capsicum.
I think basically, of course, of course it has been said and people know, sometimes putting up a greenhouse is quite expensive, the initial cost, because now you are setting it before you even produce or you even plant your plants. But basically, for current Capsicum, I think even from their production levels, because of course they are good at producing, now when you compare it to the fact that they need to be done in a greenhouse, I think they go hand in hand. Because like we mentioned earlier, they normally don't do well under the open field. Of course, they are meant for here. And again, if you check on the parameters, like when we give the comparison between now the open field and these ones that are done indoors, is that you find out that those open field ones, they are usually short. But this one, it will give you a guarantee of the height will be up. It will actually get to that level of the greenhouse. Okay. So that one means you'll have more time harvesting. Okay. Like if, for example, you're harvesting for the open field one, the green Capsicum, maybe you're harvesting it for maybe 2 months. This one you can even be able to harvest it from 7 months to 9 months. So you see now you have a longer period for harvest. So basically now, of course, greenhouse installations depends with the sizes that you want to establish. Of course, they vary with size, now the costing. So, but for a greenhouse like this one is a bit big, because here we have 3 streams of a greenhouse, actually measuring 8 by 30 meters. So we have 4 of them. So the initial cost is a bit high. Maybe I don't know if I mentioned the prices for the greenhouses. Greenhouses, I think for a wooden, because of course we have different types of greenhouses. To start with, we have the wooden, like this one, and we have the metallic. Of course, that one now depends on your preference. Maybe the greenhouse that you want to introduce. Like for this one is a wooden greenhouse, which is a bit cheap now compared now to the metallic one. So this one may cost you around 650,000 to 700. That's now for the initial cost of the greenhouse before now you put your crops.
Okay, so that is putting the water supply.
Yes, the irrigation system, the structure.
The structure itself. 600 to 750.
Yeah, sure.
Per ground.
Yeah.
Before you put a seed in the soil.
True.
And that's important for farmers to realize, because there is also room for people banding together and doing projects together, so that you don't have to carry that whole burden, especially for young farmers. And now, in terms of when growing the capsicum, some people follow that process, they've set up the greenhouse, but they still lose their product. In terms of now putting seed to soil, planting these capsicums, how do you take care of them for them to be able to be productive in the way they should, and not to have, you know, you losing on your product because of you didn't do 1, 2, 3 things? How do you do it right once you grow the capsicums?
I think it's the most important thing here to note about greenhouse. Actually, when you talk about carrot capsicum production in a greenhouse, sometimes the greenhouse is not as important as the soil that you are getting ready for now for production.
Okay.
So basically here, in as much as you hear, of course the cost of greenhouse is a bit expensive, but the most important thing is the soil. And that's why as a farmer and also as a consultant, I first of all encourage farmers to the first thing before you even get into the production is to know your soil.
Okay.
Of course, you get soil test. You get your soil tested and analyzed, of course. And when you talk about this carrot capsicum, there are 2 very important tests that you are supposed to do to your soil. The first test is the soil nutritional levels, like what does my soil has, or what is lacking in my soil, so that you can also be able to know how to go about that. The second test is on the pathological aspect. This is where now we talk about the soil-borne diseases and all the diseases that can affect the particular crop. So those are the most basic ones before you get to your soil. And now the important thing about getting your soil tested, especially when you're doing it in a greenhouse, is first of all, maybe you might skip that level and then you plant your plants. Then maybe later you find out there is a certain disease. Now that is in terms of pathological. In terms of nutrition, sometimes when you have the soil test results, you're able to know what is in my soil in terms of nutrition and what is not there. So sometimes it also lowers the cost of buying inputs like fertilizers. You know, there are some elements that are already in the soil, so you don't need to add it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
So soil test is very important.
Very important.
To know what is there and what needs to be sort of supplemented at the end of the day. Very, very critical, soil test.
Soil testing.
Okay. In terms of now you've planted, you've done your soil test, you understand what is lacking and what is there. What are the critical timelines within a capsicum's lifeline? That is one. And is there specific practices that you're supposed to have in terms of caring for the capsicum, even as they grow, before we even talk about harvesting and maturity?
So now, basically now let's start from now you've had your soil test, so you know what is in the soil.
Yes.
So the second thing that as a consultant I also do is now I get you a program in terms of the feeding program, of course for the specific plants. So now this program is based on the soil test results. Of course, it's addressing issues that has been captured on the soil test results. So basically, for this carrot capsicum, the first thing, there are things like after doing the soil test, there are things that you also consider like the pH of the soil. Sometimes it needs to be lowered, sometimes it needs to be up. Those are some of the basic things when you talk about capsicum. And now, because now we are very specific, we are doing carrot capsicum. Of course, there are things that this specific plant needs, like during the establishment. And like you've asked about which are the basic stages of this carrot capsicum. The first stage is the establishment. That is very important because, of course, that is the one that now guarantees you that you will have, let's say, 100% germination now after you put your seedlings from the start. So the second important stage in this carrot capsicum is the fruit and flowering stage. Of course, that is now get you now to the market because, of course, you have the products.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's after how long?
It takes around 3 to 4 months.
3 to 4 months.
Yeah.
Fruit and flowering.
Fruit and flowering.
Yeah, and I see a lot of farm hands helping around the greenhouse. What exactly are they doing? The process of the day-to-day handling of these capsicums.
Good. So basically, these carrot capsicum, by nature, they are heavy feeders. And when I talked about the programs, the feeding and the spray programs. Is that these plants, they are usually sprayed every week. Of course, they have weekly activities that are supposed to be done, from pruning, from fertilizer application, from spraying. So, and basically what the farm hands are doing, they're actually doing the top dressing. They are adding fertilizers now to the plant. And of course, in the evening, you'll find them with pumps now spraying their plants. Because like we said, these are high value crops. And that's why we have gone to that extent of putting them in under a greenhouse. A place that we can be able to control their management and all the practices are put in place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ah, that's very important. Heavy feeders.
Yeah, heavy feeders.
Okay. So, in terms of harvesting, you say it starts flowering after 2-3 months?
Okay. For flowering, that is continuous. Now, after those 3 months,
The initial 3 months.
continue now to the point that you'll get now. You want to put them down.
Okay.
So flowering is constant now from there.
Okay.
Actually, that's why now we have those two stages. Of course, the establishment one is one that we say now you've put your seedlings. It's still young, so you need to give it all it needs for it to grow well and get well established. Now to support the stage, the crucial
stage.
which is fruit and flowering.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So for these ones already, they're already fruiting.
Yes.
So in terms of the length, yeah, I know you've touched. You say that this can grow up to the ceiling.
Yes,
You know.
yes.
How long does that go for? In terms of for capsicum plant producing quality, and you as a farmer harvesting, how long does that go before you start now realizing the quality of fruits? We now need to do another cycle of planting.
So the most important thing here, Noah, is that you see now here we are in a greenhouse.
Yes.
And meaning, if you are in a greenhouse, there are things that, of course, we don't have control for, like the height. Of course, the greenhouse has height that we cannot go beyond. So we need to take care of our crop. So the first thing that we usually do is that when you're doing it on a greenhouse, like I mentioned earlier, this plant will grow tall.
Yes.
Which is to our advantage, because of course that tallness is what now will give us fruits. Of course, they grow as they produce fruits. Now, what we usually do is that we try as much as possible to maintain a good height, a controlled height. Of course, that one is done under the feeding program. So you need to know, and that is very important even to this capsicum. You need to know what the plant needs, at what stage, and at what rate, so that you don't mess around. So you don't miss that, and you don't give them underdose, let me mention that. So now what we usually do for this current capsicum, like for this one, the particular ones, we are targeting to harvest them now from the point that not from now. Actually, right now they are 3 months, right now. Okay. So now from around 3.5 months, of course that's a half that is coming. We will be starting to harvest them. So now from that point that we shall have our first harvest, we are targeting not less than 7 months of harvesting.
Okay.
So you get.
Okay.
So that's why now we also need to consider the height. So that height, so we have to control them by giving them what they need at that stage, what they require at what rate, and at what time. So we don't need to mess around that, because now that's now what will make them maintain that height until we get to a 7 months or even more.
Okay.
So but now the point that we usually get to realize that, of course, the production is, you see, even these plants, they also get to exhaustions.
Yes.
Now after some times. So now that's when we usually mention around 7 months. Yeah.
Okay, 7 months. Very, very important. And when you talk about after the 7 months, after the exhaustion of a plant's capacity, and let's talk about if you feed your plant right, what is the potential in terms of the number of kgs that a plant can produce in its lifetime? What are the targets? What are the peaks that you hope to achieve for you to be profitable?
Okay, that's also a very important question. You see, for this capsicum, like for us, you see what we've done, because like we've said, this is more of agribusiness. So we need to produce.
Yes.
And in as much as we need to produce quality and of course quantity for us to be in the market. So what you can see from our capsicum is that we have done each capsicum has 3 lobes. You get that? So these 3 lobes also now give us the production that we might be expecting. Because what we've done under this one plant, so we shall leave 4 branches. Now from one plant, not just the one plant. So we divided to 4 branches. So these 4 branches, each branch will be producing. So by this, you can be able now to know like how many kgs do I expect in a certain plant. Because what these 4 branches means, it means if you are to harvest on one plant, of course each plant, of course they are coming up with the different stages. Of course you have the big fruits, the young fruits, and the flowers coming up along that line. So now what we usually do, you will be able now to realize that when these plants start to ripen the fruits, so each plant should give you 4 fruits.
Okay.
That's why now you leave this one, and of course you remove any other. Now, of course, to balance the feeding, so that the plant of course doesn't struggle to feed the other.
So
branches.
each branch
should have
4 fruits.
Yes.
So it's 12 fruits per plant.
No. I mean this plant, this specific plant,
Okay.
we have given it 4 branches.
Okay.
So any other branch we've removed it. So this branch should give us a fruit at that stage. You see, if you check from this, like this plant,
Yes.
you can be able this one, and that one. Those are 4.
Yes.
If you check there down, we have 4 fruits on
Yes.
each branch. This one has 1 fruit, this one has 1 fruit, this one has 1 fruit. And to note that the harvesting usually takes every week. Harvesting is usually done every week.
Yeah.
So it means that each week we have to get 4 fruits from one plant, because of course we have these branches.
Okay.
Now these branches now are the ones that now guarantee us to have harvesting each week, because of course they are growing as they grow up.
All right, makes sense. And as we finish up, you mentioned that you start with the market, and now we finish with the market in terms of the demand for this particular crop right now in Kenya, and based on you practicing, farming colored capsicums. How's the market demand? Has it shifted over time? Are we eating more colored capsicums compared to what we used to do initially?
Of course, this is normal to the Kenyan market. That of course demand and supply, of course, they determine the prices. But of course, sometimes the supply is up, sometimes the demand is up. But for this specific colored capsicum, one thing interesting about it is that the point that you mentioned about it is not done on open field. So basically we can say it's not done by everybody. So it needs some specific guidelines now for you to produce. And when you talk about the colored capsicum, I think in Kenya, of course, more people are getting now to know the colored capsicum, and they are loving it. So of course the market is expanding day in, day out.
Okay.
So we can basically say that the demand for the colored capsicum is quite good, because of course even the prices are not as bad as we may talk of, and of course it keeps on changing depending on the demand that is there. So basically we can say that the demand is good, but sometimes the supply is low. But of course sometimes it's otherwise.
Okay.
But not as we cannot say it's that's a challenge now to the market.
All right. Thank you very much, Sam. I think this has been a very good conversation.
Thank you.
Learned a lot about colored capsicum farming, which is very, very critical, and how to make sure that we are having maximum productivity at the end of the day. So we appreciate you once again. Thank you for making time for Farm Kenya Show.
Thank you.
All right, there we have it. I hope you've taken notes. First of all, do your market research so that you know where to sell your products. But secondly, before you do anything, test your soil so that you know what kind of soil you have. It's very, very important when it comes to your productivity. At this particular moment, the Farm Kenya Show takes a short break. When you come back, we still have more from the farming world.
Unalima ardhi, mlango wa kulima, kuwa mshindi, kuwa na uhakika sasa, kulea mustakabali wa baadaye. Tufanye kazi pamoja na tukue pamoja, kuimarisha Kenya ni jukumu la Farm Kenya.
Welcome back to the Farm Kenya Show. In the first half, we've talked about capsicum farming, especially colored capsicum, which is very critical. And now we are outside When people ask you where you are, say you are outside the greenhouse. And here we have a kitchen garden, and we still have some. Kulima mwenyewe, consultant pia. Some. So kitchen gardens, we assume is that a small space at the back of your kitchen that you throw your tomatoes that you're not using, and they start sprouting and just being tomato, plants. But talk to me about what is a kitchen garden?
I think a kitchen garden, Mr. Noah, as the name suggests, is somewhere. Of course, these are things that are used in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. So a kitchen garden to me is somewhere I can go. I get all things that I need for my kitchen when I'm cooking. I get vegetables, I get tomatoes, I get onions, everything. Mm-hmm. So that's a simple definition of a kitchen garden.
All right. Yeah. So essentially it supplies your kitchen.
Yeah, it supplies your kitchen.
Everything you need.
Yes.
Ni mahindi tu ya kwenda kusiaga unga.
But mahindi, you can still plant mahindi here.
No, really?
Yeah, you can plant everything.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So in terms of a proper kitchen garden, because I see here, this is when we have a mixture of everything. We have onions, we have cabbages, everything as you've rightly put it. Is there a formula to doing kitchen garden well? Can it be done wrong, or as long as you spray your seeds, you're good to go?
Yeah, of course there are specific ways that you're supposed to organize your kitchen garden. Like we've said, this is somewhere you're able to get everything that it's a supply for your kitchen. So basically, where people usually does wrong when you talk about a kitchen garden is this point whereby you find people using, like for example, if you check on our kitchen garden here, this is purely organic. No synthetic chemicals, no fertilizers, no nothing. So there are things that they are growing naturally, and of course they become even healthier to when now you feed them. So basically, in a kitchen garden, of course, from what you've said, is they need to have a specific manner in which you've structured them. Like you need to have places you have the vegetables like the spinach, the sukuma wiki, the onion, and one thing and a very important thing that you can also take from this kitchen garden is, like for example, in our kitchen garden here, you see we have spinach, and inside actually in every corner you see onions on those levels. These onions also act as repellent to pest. So you see now that also gives you on how you're supposed to put your plants on a kitchen garden.
Oh, really? That's incredible. So using biological means to repel pests.
Yeah.
Do you think lack of information or failure to know that leads to a lot of people with kitchen gardens that are not doing very well? And what other information do we need to have other than using biological means to resist pests, which is a huge problem when it comes to farming generally? What other precautions should people take when they're putting up a kitchen garden?
I think the precaution here is, first of all, to understand why you're putting up a kitchen garden.
Okay.
The first thing, from what I usually understand as a farmer, and some of course also depend on this kitchen garden, is that when you're putting up a kitchen garden, the most important thing is that you're also trying to save a coin. Now, of course, you see now, if you check on the things that are usually used in the kitchen every day, of course, we have onions, we have sukuma wiki and all that. It's only that people don't do the calculations like oftenly, but you'll be able to realize that there is so many money that goes to outside there that maybe you're supposed to save for something else.
Okay.
And provided now, as the name suggests, the kitchen garden, when you talk about a kitchen garden, you just need a small space for you to establish one.
Okay.
So basically, the most important thing when you talk about a kitchen garden is you're able to save a coin. Of course, like from our kitchen garden here, we don't go buying these vegetables outside there, so we are producing them. Mm-hmm. Number two is that, like I've mentioned, these particular vegetables, they are healthy, they are free from chemicals, because of course what we usually do here is just the manure, and then we water it, so they grow under that circumstance. And of course we've talked about this repellent, like here we have onions, we have dania, and those are some of the things that you use for biological control of pests.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're very critical. And I mean, if you do kitchen garden properly, you can even supply the market out there, because I've seen some of the interventions in different spaces, like the Ma community. The women are encouraged to have kitchen gardens, and from there you can sell your products. So in terms of the potential for kitchen garden, other than just supplying your very own kitchen, can somebody, employ agribusiness mindset to eat, not only to save money for themselves, but also make money from the small space that they have?
Yes, we can. Because of course, what you usually do is that you also need to establish on how you are supposed to produce those particular vegetables. And number two, when you talk about the market, is that of course nowadays people are preferring natural grown food. Yes. So basically, where someone knows that this particular spinach are produced healthy, they are free from chemicals, they are free from any synthetic elements in them. So of course you'll have more people now getting your product. So even in terms of the marketing and of course the selling, the agribusiness way, it is possible for a kitchen garden. Yeah, possible for a kitchen garden.
In fact, it can be a selling point, saying mine is organically
very
produced.
organic. Yeah.
That's incredible. That's good. In terms of using the manure, if you're setting up a kitchen garden, is there a system that you can create around your homestead mostly to be able to make sure that you're supplying the nutrients, the natural nutrients from the compost and whatnot? Is there a way to do it so that your kitchen garden is well, supplied in nutrients?
Yes. Of course, what you do when you talk about a kitchen garden,
yes,
we have different designs that can suit your compound. And one of these, like for us here, you see we have just done it on portions, like put this portion underwater. But of course that one is because we have quite a big space. But of course there are other ways, like we have the vertical gardening, we have the hydroponics, we have the troughs. Okay, these are some of the things that usually when you want now to set up the kitchen garden. Okay. And another thing when you talk about a kitchen garden, and the most important thing is that it's also an aesthetic way of beautifying your homestead. So now when you're using other means like the one that I've mentioned, the vertical garden, what the vertical garden does, you put it in a specific, actually we call it an edible landscaping.
Okay.
So you landscape your compound in an edible manner. So you can landscape it under spinach. Like for a vertical garden, we have layers for spinach, we have layers for sukuma wikis. You see, it's something that is beautiful and suits your compound.
That's incredible. So different formats.
Yeah.
It depends on the space that you have.
Yeah.
Definitely, if you have limited space, you can always opt to go higher. Apply hydroponics and whatnot. Very, very interesting. And this even marries to the larger conversation around food security in this country.
Sure.
Because as a nation, we are not food secure. We are net importers of food. And that is a very tricky place to be.
It is.
I don't know, from your experience, how did we land here? And do you think maybe starting from the basic level of having a kitchen garden, that could be a huge milestone in regards to solving this challenge of food security in the country?
Yeah, kitchen garden is one of the best way actually to fight food security. Like you've mentioned, it's true that in our country we are not food secure because of course we are relying on so much importation of agricultural products. You see now, when you have a kitchen garden, the first thing and the most important thing to note is that it is so sensitive to space. Actually, your small space, there is something that can suit for that space. You have a big space, there is something that can also suit for that. So actually, if more people adopt these ways of kitchen gardening, you see now we can be able now to reduce the importation. Of course, we can also be able to produce our own food from the comfort of the comfort of our backyard.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's very, very important. And for younger folks who want to come into agribusiness, because I mean, first half we talked about colored capsicums, and we just looked at the initial investment for even putting a greenhouse. It's quite costly. Majority of young Kenyans I know there are those who are able to raise this amount of money, but you sort of have to find a step into something before going big on it. And I'm thinking in the agricultural world, I mean, the good books talks about if you are entrusted and you're faithful with a little, then, if you're faithful with a little, you will be entrusted with more. I don't know whether that mentality applies to even farming, like trying out in small spaces, and even before we go big. Could that be sort of an introduction of a culture change in regards to how we process agriculture and even agribusiness in this country?
I think now, as you've mentioned, especially now towards the young folks, is that we need to have that transition of this mind that you can only start big. You can only start big. That is what is in most of us young people. You think that you see someone with driving a big car or having a big lunch or doing some huge farming, you think that I can also do that. But that is not the case. Actually, what we should do as young farmers is that and I think there is no other business, because of course farming is a business nowadays. There is no other business that can give you room to start small compared to agriculture. I think agriculture is the best business sector that can give you that room whereby you can start small. Like for example, if you talk about this spinach, you see it's like a transition. Like you start a small kitchen garden, you get people buying your product, and over time, because of what you've mentioned about the organic nature of these vegetables, so people will now be spreading that, hey, so and so is producing organic vegetables. So what is happening by that? So it means more people are coming to get your product. And again, now from your end, you also need to expand your production. So you see now over time, you get yourself, you are even supplying maybe a whole community or a place. So you need more products for the same. So it means that agriculture is the best agribusiness sector that can give you that room for you to expand or to start small as you proceed. Because you can start this vegetable supply. Next time, you, of course, carrot capsicum is also a form of vegetable. And now from this, you can also transit to the greenhouse farming. Of course, we have other farming sectors or farming areas that are not exhausted. So it's a wide.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's very, very important. And even nutrition-wise, because recently there was the release of the Global Hunger Index in this country. And close to 35% of the country is undernutrition.
True.
So essentially the foods that we're eating as a nation, 3 to 4 out of 10 Kenyans are not having proper intake or calorific intake that they should have on average. That, a healthy nation is a wealthy nation. So if you are not healthy, also is a big issue.
True.
In terms of having outfits such as kitchen gardening and the diversity that it gives to and brings to your plate, talk to me about how that marries into household nutrition in this country.
You see now, like you mentioned, when you talk about things that are produced basically in a kitchen garden, actually they are the things that are missing on the plate when you talk about the diet perspective. Because now for you, if you check on this kitchen garden, like our case here, so we have vegetables. When you talk about vegetables, this is one of the essential diet that actually for you to be nutritional safe, you're supposed not to miss. If you check on our kitchen garden, you can also be able to even produce fruits. It's very also essential in terms of nutrition.
Yes.
So the fact that this kitchen garden is giving you a wide variety of selection of different crops now to suit your nutritional requirement, it means that it's one of the things that should be taken serious and into place for you to safeguard the nutrition.
Definitely, very, very important. And as we close up this conversation about kitchen gardening and many other issues attached to kitchen gardening, I mean, for the future, because we see For example, look at Kiambu County, which is one of the, it has one of the best soils in the country in terms of agricultural soil. And Kenya, I mean, a small percentage of our land is arable. So we really have to maximize on the spaces that we have that are productive. But we are having this infestation, they call it the concrete jungle that is taking over. So we are converting such spaces into real estate. I mean, as a farmer, as an agriculturalist, as a consultant in this field, does that concern you heavily in regards to where we are heading as a nation in terms of food productivity, or do you see now a shift into large-scale production and mega industrialist players in the farming ecosystem that now are coming big, and such outfits are no longer necessary?
I think honestly, no, that one hates me greatly, because now, like you mentioned, of course here we are in Kiambu, and from the small space that you can see we are in, everywhere else you see buildings, huge buildings, of course, being erected every day. And that one gives me an oversight of how the future may be if we are not able to take care of that. Because if, in as much as we are doing the small kitchen garden here, of course there will be a time, and there are two things that are happening. The population is increasing. People are increasing day in, day out. So, and it means that we also need to have food enough for this generation that is coming. And like you mentioned about Kiambu, of course, the soil is very good for production. But what is mostly happening there is what you mentioned about the concrete nature of the buildings. That is. So that one now means that there will be a time, even as we are trying to address food shortages in Kenya, it means that it is like we are addressing an issue as we expand it. Because now, I usually reason this way. In as much as there is development, everything is coming up. There is so many improvement in terms of the new inventions in different levels, also to talk about agriculture. But I don't see if we shall come to a point where you can be able to print a piece of vegetable, a piece of spinach from a printer. I don't think so. There's no way we shall be able now to come up with ways that we can be able to have a machine that is producing tomatoes. I think definitely that will not happen. And the most important thing is to understand about agriculture is that for you to achieve something that is to be called from crop production, it have to get to the process of soil, or it is a process that needs over time. So it means that we are in quite a time that we need to address these issues of the food production, because like we've mentioned, if you check on how the population is rising and how we are, all these viable lands, we are using it on different areas like the construction, leaving not forgetting that over time we shall not have enough land now for the production. So I think that one is something that also need to be addressed, and it's a real crisis that is going to happen.
Definitely. Wow, Sam, this has been a good conversation, I think. You mentioned whether we'll reach a point where tomatoes will be printed. Yeah, right now we are still at a level of chapati making machine. Yeah, a million chapos. Interesting. But I mean, right now we are seeing even lab-grown meat that is being touted as a future alternative to beef that we are used to from raising cows and whatnot. So we don't know. The future is quite a crazy one, trust you me, but let's see how that goes. But thank you very much for your time and involvement in the Farm Kenya product. We really appreciate you. And asante sana.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Saa mwenyewe. Wow. That has been a beautiful conversation. First part, we've tackled the issues to do with capsicums, how to do it right. Secondly, we've tackled the issue of kitchen gardens and how it marries into the larger vision of food security in this particular nation. And that's where we put a full stop to today is Farm Kenya. My name is Nokip Kimboy. Until the next one.
Unalima ardhi, mlango wa kulima ushindi. Kuwa na uhakika sasa, kukulea mustakabali wa baadaye. Tufanye kazi pamoja na tukue pamoja. Kuimarisha Kenya ni jukumu la Farm Kenya.
Farm Kenya, brought to you by Fugo.